Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushai, Ba'asham, Makakdash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Milestone. Salutations, you Akim, pushing this word in sincerity and in truth. Your brother Yassad back at you with another lesson. Will not edify through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushai. And this lesson here, as I see the title, the Israelites can be identified through prophecy. You know, through basically through the Bible, because hey, when you really check the Bible is basically by Israelites and for Israelites. You know, majority, yes, it mentions the the, the other nations and whatnot, but it mainly focuses on the Israelites. The whole Bible mainly focuses on the Israelites. It's more or less everything revolves around the Israelites. You know, yeah, the Israelites is the main characters basically. You know, yeah. So we could identify them through the prophecies and what had took place with them and whatnot, the Israelites, right? Because here it is, we understand that a lot of there there's a group of people in the land that the Israelites supposed to be in, claiming to be the Israelites and whatnot, but we won't go too much into that, but we will go to show you, according to the prophecies, what would befall the Israelites and whatnot. So it would give us basically a, a idea of how we could point out whereby, well, then these this has to be the people, this has to be the Israelites. So well, I this little small clip to play here from TikTok by JK.
Who are the Israelites of today? Now, the way you figure out who the Israelites are today is you figure out the prophecies of the curses that God put on these people. And in Deuteronomy 28:46, God said that this will be a sign and a wonder upon these people.
Yeah, because that is a next thing that you could identify them as by, through the curses, right? You look at all the different nations of people, and you compare, the Deuteronomy 28, you know, from the 15th chapter on down, you compare, these curses to the people, and that and all would also pinpoint, who the Israelite refers to. Okay.
For forever, right? So we got to figure out who are the Israelites today. Are they those people over there in that land right now? Well, let's read what God told the Israelites, or Moses told the Israelites in the wilderness in Deuteronomy 28:15. Because in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1, God said, if you follow my commandments, my laws, and statutes, all these blessings will be upon you. But let's see what God said to them if they did not follow his laws, commandments, and statutes. And he says in verse 15, but it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken or listen unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. And then you can read on down and see all the curses that came upon the Israelites. But specifically, I want to read verse 68, right? That's what the part I really want to read, and everybody to see this part right here. And it says in verse 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Right? Why would the God need to bring them into Egypt again with ships? When they went into Egypt, they walked into Egypt. And when Moses took them out of Egypt, they walked out of Egypt. Right? But if you read Deuteronomy 5 and 6.
Yes, because when you check it out, when the Israelites, you know, when they was in slavery and whatnot, also, yes, it they when you really check the history on the Israelites, they were constantly in and out of slavery, right? But the difference being, as you mentioned, concerning they could have walk, you know, so they could have walk, because it was basically being under slavery in just different parts, more or less, you could say in the vicinity, where they originated from, you know. It wasn't that, all right, well, we needed ships now to carry them to serve the slavery under those times in Egypt when it was under captivity under the Egyptians, Pharaoh and whatnot, you know. But this Egypt that it's speaking of here, Egypt, the word Egypt goes into bondage. That what Egypt represents. So I'll continue.
Egypt is synonymous for the land of slavery or captivity or bondage, right? So again, it says that the Lord shall bring thee again into Egypt again with ships. What does that sound like? That sounds like the Atlantic slave trade to me, right? And it says, by the way thereof I spake unto thee, there you shall see it no more again. And there, when you get to this place, ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bond women, or slave men and slave women, and no man shall buy you. So the way you figure out who the Israelites are today, you read the curses of Deuteronomy and see who fits these curses. Who was taken from their land to another land on ships and to a land they didn't know, people they didn't know, a tongue they did not know, right? So y'all tell me what y'all think about that of who the Israelites are.
Yeah, and hey, the Jake is on point because when you go here into we'll get some precepts, the transatlantic slave trade, right? Because, well, first off, I'll go into the curses, and then I'll head back to that because you know let me see here, right? The Deuteronomy 28 and 15. But we'll go a bit into the curses and but it shall come to pass that thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe and to do all his commandment and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Right? Because even Moses prophesied, and say, oh, he knew they would not listen. Because, hey, according to the Isaiah chapter 1, this is a stiff-necked and rebellious people, and I'll get after. The book of Baruch, chapter 2, and verses, let's see here, uh, 28 to 28. As thou speakest by thy servant Moses in the day when thou commandest him to write the law before the children of Israel, saying, because the Lord basically, through Moses gave the law unto the children of Israel, and set up the covenant, via Moses unto the children of Israel, he used Moses to relate unto the people. It say, if you will not hearken, if you will not hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them. For I knew, and this is Moses saying, he knew that they would not hear me because it is a stiff-necked people, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves. Right? And I'll come back to this precept later on in the lesson because in the land of the captivity, because right now, you know um when you really check it out through history, that we was the some of the Unisata nations in a broad scale, in a mass, in a mass scale to be, shipped, and sealed off first to serve under the hands of our enemies, right? Well, let me just get Isaiah 1 first, because Isaiah 1 and 4, chapter 2. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel doth not know, my people doth not consider. So even an ox, a dumb animal, or a donkey, right? He know which part he dwelling places the master's crib is. But Israel don't know don't know the power. They don't know, you know, because why we was carried away by all these dumb idols, because of the curses. That is why we don't know. This one making it one of the most dreaded slavery that we have passed through because we didn't know the name of our power. We know that we Africans and that is just the extent of it. You know, that is what they taught us. But Yahweh Bashem Yerishai sent back his prophet, to restore back, you know, the truth unto us. So why to Yahweh Bashem Yerishai for that. Isaiah 1 and 4, a sinful nation. Yeah, because we laden with iniquity and transgression against the Most High laws. The people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel into anger. They are gone away backward. Yeah, because that right is what caused this destruction unto us because of our constant transgressions. And mentioned in Baruch 4 and verses 2, verses 6. Ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because you moved Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to wrath, you were delivered into the hands of the enemies, right? Because hey, that is it, right? How could we, you know, because this is all just dedicated to us, right? Because we know that the Lord, when He gave His law, statutes, and commandment to the Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, yeah. Because only they could go off because the covenant alone was with them, right? The Lord didn't make a covenant with these other nations. But yeah. Verse 7, for ye provoked him that made you by sacrificing unto devils. Here we learn the way of the other nations and did wickedly, pursuing to the Isaiah 106. And ye have grieved Jerusalem that nursed you. For when she saw the wrath of Yahweh coming upon you, she said, Hearken, O ye that dwell about Zion, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yerishai had brought upon me good morning. For I saw the captivity of my sons and daughters, which the everlasting brought upon them. Right? Yeah, and let's get it, from Gemini. The transatlantic slave trade was a massive forced migration that primarily target people from the West and Central Africa. I even went into a little history on the Byzantine Empire that, when the Ottoman Empire took down the Byzantine Empire, a lot of people went into slavery, which we know is Jakes, from Constantinople that ruled, that area, under the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah, those were Jakes, right? It says between the 16th and 19th century, approximately 12.5 million so-called Africans were kidnapped and transported across the Atlantic. Here's a breakdown of primary targets and the region that they were taken from. Because hey, it's not just Africans, it is Israelites, because the scripture talks about, he do put a difference, between the children of Israel and the Egyptians, you know, because it's different type of people, and Let me see if I get Exodus 11:7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai doth put a difference between the Egyptians and and Israel. Yes, so it had a difference between them because they are heathens, but the Israelites are the chosen of the Most High Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, you know. That's why you see a bit difference in. Yes, it was a common thing we know that through persecution our people used to hide amongst, hide in Egypt and whatnot. For example, in Matthew, the first chapter, you know, in Matthew, no, Matthew, there, Matthew 2, there, man, right, right, Matthew 2 and 13. It said, when they were departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared, because this was in the time of King Herod, when he heard about the Messiah and whatnot, and he sought to kill all the firstborn, but the Lord sent his angel, that he may appear unto Joseph. Behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring the word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he rose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, because it was a common thing that when they would, through persecution, they would go into Egypt and whatnot and hide themselves. Right? Yeah. So, right. It say West Central Africa, Congo, and Angola, um, parts of Nigeria, modern day Benin, Togo, because a lot of that Nigeria is basically going to the old nigger area, you know, or Niger, which is black, black area, which is Jakes, because there's even in the New Testament when they call one of, I think it was Philip nigger. If you forget, you know, and that day, right, it wasn't Philip. Now there were in church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simon or Simeon, that was called Niger, the Lucius of Cyrene and Manian, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. Because we know the description of our people would be melanated people, because the scripture talk about the black to the ground. You know? Let's see if I get in the book of Jeremiah 14. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languisheth. They are all black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is going up. You know? Yeah. It has a description as well as they being ruddy. That kind of light, kind of brownish look. That kind of reddish brownish look. Yeah, that is the color of Jakes, right? Yeah, that is why King Solomon was a so-called black man. There's even another thing here. Right now. Yeah, Right.
So many people are blinded to the scriptures, blinded to historical truth, and they're led by their heartstrings, but it's not actually fact. One of those things again that people have been led for so many years is thinking that the Ashkenazi are in fact descendants of Shem, and we've discovered that the Ashkenazi are in fact the synagogue of Satan. They're the descendants of Japheth. They're Turkic Mongolists, the society that tries to enslave us, names us. I'm not a Caucasian, okay? Because a Caucasian is an Asian from the Caucasus Mountain region. Who's Caucasian? The Jews and are not. But what about Egypt? What about Mitzrayim, Egypt? What about Egypt? The pharaohs were black. They weren't white. They were black. The ancients referred to their country as Kemet, which has been written in a variety of ways. Kemet, Kemit, Kem, Al-Kem, and it literally means the black land or the land of the blacks, Mitzrayim.
Yeah, because that was one son. And yeah, they weren't the Israelites. They were Hamites, but they bear rule in that time over the children of Israel. And the Lord basically made a great example of the power and brought great you know um deliverance unto Israel through them. But he's on point what he's saying, because they really were of dark complexion.
How did Moshe Rabbeinu go undetected for 40 years if he was a Caucasian in the land of the black faces? How did he go undetected for 40 years? How did Joseph's brothers not recognize him in the land of the black faces if he was a white man? Can you tell me that? Noah called his son Ham, in the Hebrew, Ham, Het Mem Sofit, and it means hot. Kemet and Ham are the same words in the Hebrew, which represented the coloring of the people of Mitzrayim, Egypt. What happens if something stays hot for a long time? It burns and turns black, right? In Exodus.
But I mean, black is not really term. Basically, different shades of brown, because there's dark brown, there's light brown, and whatnot. Because and I'll go into precept after this. Playing through this little video here, because the Lord say, well, the heritage is like a speckled bird. I'll bring that up.
Chapter 2, Shemot chapter 2 verse 19. Moshe was described as a Mitzri, which means a blackface, from the land of the blacks. They didn't say that he was a Mitzri Laban, a Mitzri Laban. What was Laban? Remember Laban? He was an albino, and I came back white because they were Caucasians when they returned. In 1965, the former president of Egypt, Gamal Abdul Nasser, said he couldn't respect the present Jews in Israel because they left Israel black and they came back white, because they were Caucasians when they returned, Turkic Mongol Asians from the Caucasus Mountains, the Russian steppes. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. I am black.
Yeah, and that was the description he gave. He said that, well, basically is like a dark brown, very dark shade of brown. Yeah, that was Song of Solomon 5. I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. You know? Yeah. Even the description basically in Revelation 1 and 14, it mentions, being, you know, um as brass burnt in a furnace. That was the skin tone, you know? That was basically the skin tone, right? Um I need to go too much more into that video, some more precepts here, but going back at the curses, right, during 28:15, you know I'll just skip through and bring out certain ones that recognizable. Verse 20, Deuteronomy 20, the Lord shall send upon the cursing vexation and rebuking all that thou settest thy hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, until thou perish quickly because of the wickedness of thy doing, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Yeah, because when you look at it, Jacob always in a real low estate. It's like a serving in the hands of our enemies. Under poverty is a vexation, a spirit. We always be rejected and you know be a astonishment unto the other nations. Yeah. Let's see. Hey, verse 22. The Lord shall smite thee with a consumption, with a fever, and with an inflammation. Hey, our people, a lot of our people, you know, is cancer, diabetes, all these different illnesses. Our people heavily laden with sicknesses, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. Um, it's uh, yeah, the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and thou shalt be removed into all the kingdom of the earth. Because, yeah, when that time came that, hey, when we stood to fight up against our enemies, we wouldn't prevail because, hey, don't feel that, since after slavery, there wasn't a lot of different groups that tried to stand up, and there was destroyed. It had the Black Panthers. Hey, when they had that little uprising with with with, hey, Black Wall Street, there was pulled down. You know um let me see if I get some more. You know um, yeah. Let me see. It had right, the Haitian Revolution, um, the Nocturnal Rebellion, you know, the Maroon Wars in Jamaica. Yeah, but they didn't the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya against the British colonial rule. You know, but what Jake still Jake's still under the hand of the enemies, right? Up to this day, the scriptures say, Jeremiah, look at Jeremiah 50 and 33. Uh, um, Jeremiah 50 uh, and 33 does say the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah will press together. So both the northern and the southern kingdom. That is why a lot of a lot of northern kingdom, they were being transported to Brazil and Colombia and whatnot, Jamaica and these Caribbean islands, and a lot of the Judites, they were being transported to America. It took them captives. They held them fast. They refused to let them go. Hey, just the other day, it was they was talking about if you think that's the black slave trade and whatnot isn't the most you know um the most heinous thing against heinous crime against humanity and whatnot, and hey, the areas that prominently the slave trade took place, they didn't even want to give an answer. That's how wicked they are. But it's all good. You know, Deuteronomy 28 started, pointing out the curses. Um, 28, the Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. Yeah, a lot of people fall prey to being, in the madhouse and whatnot. All this is a part of the curses. Verse 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather a grape, because this is prominent. You know, a lot of adultery take place around amongst our people. You know, another man lying with your wife. You build a house, and you're not gonna dwell there because hey, this system set up. You see a lot of even my uncle was a prey to that. He married a woman and whatnot, and they lived together for like 2, 3 years. They paid off her house, and after that, she took up a young fella and divorced him and took the house. So he built a house. As soon as he finished, did a nice little renovation and on it and whatnot. Hey, Eve, and the backing of this wicked system for the woman took the house. And it's just to show you, it's just all this is parts of the curses on Jacob, right? And thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof, because that even going back into the work that we and the labor that we put out, because there's a lot of skill Jakes with, you know, um, in the different fields, construction and whatnot, and yeah, you work for the enemy, but you and basically reaping the benefits. You reaping a little small salary to get your buy and buy just for you to be able to come back out the next day. And that's it, right? Some of the other curses to identify our people. Um, uh, verse 36, the Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shall, shall set over thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shall thou serve thy other gods, wood and stone. Because yeah, that is it. That is why the beatings and whatnot was for us to forget our heritage, and basically, you know, learn the ways of the other nations and learn their gods. All of that was a heavy part of our of our judgment. That we would be stripped away, pursuant to the Jeremiah 17 and 4, which I'll bring afterwards. Right? It's it, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether the Lord shall lead thee. That is why we is always the main topic. You know, look up on the news. You go up on the news now, you would see Jake as a robber, Jake as a murderer, Jake, a thief. We make up the bywords. We as degenerates, when you look at us, majority of us, we doing all the dog work, the low lives in society. We always begging and whatnot. All of this is the curses being made effectual on Jacob. The so-called Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans. Let's say down, I must jump down to verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up high up above the very high, and thou shalt be the tail, because this is where we prominently see. No, so that the stranger that is within thee shall get up above the very high, right? And thou shalt come down very low. Going back into the system, you see majority are Jake in low positions. You know, we always at the bottom of the barrel, doing the dog jobs, while the other nations, they basically in the high positions in the office. Jake always being on the field, doing all the groundwork, all the hard work. All lies are part of the curses. The enemies being over us, right? Though he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. Because look how the system set up. You see a Eastern Union, Credit Union. You see the Chinese are the Chinese Association. All these things they have to be able to aid themselves, but there's nothing for Jacob, as the scripture say. Who had pitied thee, O Jerusalem? There's nothing put in Jake beside for Jake to be for Jake to just be a a plowman, to work hard and then to reach the age of 60 and 65, then to retire. And by the time Jake retired, Jake sick, is cancer, diabetes, because it's one set of uh, a caffeine Jake taking in, and turbo, and all sorts of energy drink to push those hours and to get our work done for all those years. And when Jake ready to settle in, Jake sick. Some sickness take Jake. Jake get like a little few months of pension and Jake pass away. You know? Verse Jeremiah chapter 15 and verse 5. For who shall who shall have pity upon thee, O Jerusalem? Or who shall bemoan thee? Or who shall go aside to ask how thou doest? No one. You know? No one. Um must see verses 40, I'm gonna start at verse 47. Because thou servest not the Lord thy power with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst. That's why you see the Sing supermarket, you know, the 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 Lees, the Moabites, the Easternians and whatnot. Their franchises, their restaurants, so we ought to go into their establishment, you know, for for food, for clothes, and all these things. When time for you to build a house, we had to go to their hardwares, you know. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. We have to go onto their bank in institutions to get a loan. And we know the scripture as it say the borrower is servant to the lender. Right? Um let's see. Curses that are easily to identify our people. Right, verse 54. Right? So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil towards his brother. You know, hey, just imagine today while I went to work and I going back into in a certain area that I worked for a couple about a year or 2 years time period, and just somebody co-workers and whatnot that got a little job from the company in the area, and one of them, they're trying to do a little build up and whatnot, and the same neighbors who is laugh Jakes, who's laugh and drink and talk with him, he doing a little work by him. They rather talk bad about the Jake. Oh, um, he see the timing and he want to go and build a upstairs house, and instead of help the Jake, they rather bad talk and all these foolishness, because they are no togetherness with Jacob. The scripture say the eyes being evil towards one another. All of that is just the curses. You know, imagine they being friends and drink together and think for all these years, but you can't give a man a hand just to do a little casting at home, or what kind of neighbor you are. What kind of so-called friend you are or family you are. It say his eye shall be evil towards his brother, and towards the wife of his bosom, and towards the remnant of his children which he shall leave. Because some prominently amongst our people, the so-called Negroes and whatnot, they impregnate a lot of women, and they end up in the situation of having to pay cock tax or even into jail because they're not minding the children, you know. Yeah, that is Jake for you. You know, a lot of Jake, children grow up and they even know the father, what the father even look like. All of this is a part of the curses. So that they shall not give any of them, let me see, verse 56. Right? The tender and delicate woman among you, which would adventure to set the sole of her feet upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil towards the husband of her bosom, and toward a son and toward a daughter. Imagine you seeing things on the news that that our people, getting rid of the own child that came out of the mother's womb. You know, yeah. The woman who's supposed to be delicate and loving, she 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 being evil towards the husband, right? And toward the young one that cometh from between her feet, and toward the children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for in the want of all things, secretly in the siege and in straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in thy gates. Huh? Verse 59. Then the Lord will make thy plague wonderful, the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses of all of long continuance. Right? Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book. So yeah, of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until they'll all be destroyed, you know. Hey, Jake suffered with sickle cell, tumor, all sorts of different, illnesses, right? And they jumping down to the most, I was verse 64, because this here is one of the key points in identifying, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, and from one end of the earth even to the other, there shall thou serve other gods. So we wouldn't be serving our power anymore, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Right? And among all these nations thou shalt find no ease. Yeah, because think about it. You see any ease by the time Jake reaches a certain age after school, because it's first it start off with, with the schooling system, 20 years of schooling, 20 to 25 years of schooling. After you pass toddler stage, the programming already started with you. Then you had to get a job, you know, start to pay bills, you're going to debt, 'cause you need a home, you need a vehicle, and that's just Jake in debt, you know. So the soul of Jake feet can never get rest. Neither shall the soul of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee the trembling heart and the failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. Jumping to the point, 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, back into bondage, but through ships. So that is where the transatlantic slave trade came in, you know, taking them from one area to the next, beating waters through ships. Because we know the Jeremiah, well, the Jeremiah 17 and 4 is the backup, is that we gonna serve wood and stone, because we didn't continue no longer in our heritage and where we understood our customs and whatnot, but we had no choice but to learn the ways of the enemies. You know, Jeremiah 14 and 17 and 4. And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage which I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in my anger which shall burn forever. So, and that forever is not forever, is for a long period of time, but hey, the Lord say, had a nation, he had the Lord cast away his people. No, Yahweh forbid. As Paul said, for he himself is an Israelite. You know, the Lord didn't cast away his people, and neither did he will he be angry with them forever. Henceforth, we know the Israelites can wake up and have the proof and show you through history, through prophecy and the Bible and whatnot. The Israelites are out here and could identify them through the Spirit and through the help of the scriptures and prophecy and whatnot. You know, so that is where they could have come and tell us, well, we's Africans, and that's our history there, because they wanted to be hidden of our true identity, who we truly are. Being the true children of Israel who passed through the Red Sea, all these different empires until now, you know. Um, yeah. So with yeah, the book of Micah, I'll get that because it's important, because this here proves it. It said, be in pain and labor, Micah 4 and 10, be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. So for now shalt thou go forth out of the city, which was Jerusalem. They we're gonna go out of, because we know it had a time period of 70 AD when we were fleeing Roman persecution, and whatnot. That what led us into the western parts of Africa and whatnot, Nigeria, Sudan. fleeing Roman persecution. You'll get a record in Babylon to Timbuktu. O daughter of Zion, yeah, like a woman in travail, for thou shalt go out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, which is the interiors of Africa. These different, countries and whatnot that we fled to. Because even Nigeria is mainly Jakes. Plenty, a lot of Benjamites and whatnot there. You know, um, let's see, it said, thou shalt even go to Babylon. So how we reach from all these western parts of Africa and whatnot to even Babylon, which is America, is by way of ships. That's how we was brought over there. There shall thou be delivered. So is that the area that deliverance is gonna come. There the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thy enemy. And it started already, the redemption should be waking back up. Malachi 4 and 5, you know, before the great and terrible day. Right? It said, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their father, lest I come and smite the earth with a plague. That I was able to wake back up to this gospel, right, pursuing to this prophecy. There's Ezekiel, the 37 chapter, and one that I like also is the book of Revelation 11 and 8. Because it says, and their dead bodies shall lie tree in the city, in the great city which is called Sodom and Egypt, wherein also our Lord was crucified. And they of the people and kindred and tongue shall see their body 3 days and a half, and they shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. Going back into us being spiritually dead and all these different nations, they didn't come out and say, well, hey, we the chosen people of Israel, and is y'all they take and put into slavery, and none of these nations didn't do that. But the Lord did. The Lord wake us back up, you know. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry and send gifts one to another, because when they took us down, you know, it was a great joy unto them, to know that the children of Israel, you know, is basically our handmaids and servants, you know, because the two prophets tormented them that dwell on the earth, which is the northern and the southern kingdom, because when we was in power, we kept them in straight way, yeah, for example, um, as King David had garrison in Edom. I had a precept, yeah. 2 Samuel 8 and 14. And he put garrisons in Edom, throughout all Edom he put garrisons, and all they of Edom, because King David's servants, and the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went, because he had these Edomites, under great subjection, you know. Yeah, that's how he dealt with them, right? That why going back into mentioning the torment, right? When we was in power, we had them on the streets, Yeah, had them in a serious order. Yeah. So it's and after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from Yahweh entered into them. This gospel, you know, through Abba Ella Bivens, who we believe to the Spirit and power. Yahweh Shemeshah is Elijah the prophet. These great men, King Marsha and whatnot. They being the fathers bringing back the hearts, the minds of the children back, to the gospel, which is our apostles, whereby the gospel now could trickle down to the youngest member doing the Lord's work, and whatnot. As it says, yeah. And they that stood upon, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And that is what I'm afraid of, because I know the moment we basically wake up is it's gonna be their downfall, because the scripture says in Second Thessalonians they're gonna be devoured by the spirit of the Lord's mouth, which is the prophets. Because all what the Lord rises back to do, yeah, and that is so yapa, to prophesy against this kingdom, the fall of this kingdom. You know, um, let's see, yeah, um, uh, as he tell, as he told unto John, you know, yeah. Revelation 10 and 11, and he said unto me, thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings, because we know John the Revelator was sentenced to serve until he died on the island of Patmos. So we know this referring into these times where, according to the Corinthians, the spirit of the prophet being subject to the prophet. So the prophet same spirit raised back up again in these times to prophesy the downfall of this kingdom. You know? Yeah. So all things are being revealed. The Lord is about to make his appearance. So he waken back up his people so that, deliverance could bring forth before those nukes hit. This is all just the prophecies, right? The prophecies speaking. Let's see here. Yeah, Baruch. I was finish the Baruch because Baruch sums it up clearly. It's about the 30, yeah, verse 30, verse 4. Yeah, Baruch 2:30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves, and that's what's happening. And I shall know, and shall know that I am the Lord their power, for I will give them an heart and an ear to hear, and they shall what praise me in the land of their captivity, and think upon my name. Yeah, so it had to be that they had lost the name, and they get it back, you know, and return from the stiff neck and from the wicked deeds, for they shall remember the way of their fathers which sinned before the Lord. Yeah, and you see that vibration, you know. This is a way to identify them, because they will be scattered to the four corners of the earth, you know. And that is why the Lord say as well that, you know, he would then, come with the angels, and send for the trump to gather the elect from the ends of the earth, because the children of Israel being scattered. The children of Israel wouldn't be in one spot and in Jerusalem still. That means that the Lord come already. hmm If the children of Israel is already restored in the lands, that would mean the Lord come already. which is not true because the prophecy at the MOTB hasn't fulfilled yet. The mark of the beast, yeah, that prophecy, World War III, and the appearance of the Lord hadn't come yet. So we know that 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 those in the land are not the people, for sure, according to the prophecies, you know. So hey, and I'll basically do another, you know, um, a next part into this, going into the Israelites can be identified through prophecy and whatnot, right? So hey, hope this lesson was edified. I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh, Hashem Yahushai, Hashem Kakadash, double and to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone. Till the next Shalom.